Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. It's Sunday, May 28th. It's a little bit after 9:45. We're going to be doing a very important discussion today on Henry Kissinger, who I believe, and as the facts will show, he's really what I call the Fauci of foreign policy. The Fauci of foreign policy. The guy is actually a war criminal. And over the years, as usual, the media and the elites in power have tried to recharacterize this war criminal as some great statesman, but he isn't. So we're going to review that. Many of you know that in 2020, it was my effort as a scientist and systems biologist. So I was the first one to call out Fauci at a time when people like all the grifters you see out there waited until 2021, be it Rand Paul, be it all these doctors, be it Robert Kennedy was supporting lockdowns. It was my effort and the effort of the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health, which is really the effort that exposed Fauci way ahead. And if these other people who really aren't on our side, and they would never have done it, but had they done it using their megaphones, we could have had a very different effect in 2020, 2021. Before I start, I want to mention everyone, as all of you know, we're being heavily shadow banned on all of these platforms, particularly Twitter and Facebook. Elon Musk is not an agent of free speech. He's a complete scumbag. You can go read all my tweets and my Facebook posts about him. So I encourage all of you to like the post here, or like this video, share it, and subscribe to it if you're on YouTube, or hit the notification so you get access to us. And it's one of the ways that we can overcome the censor. But as I mentioned, I'm running for United States president. The reason I'm running for president is because I believe that we need a significant paradigm shift. As I've shared when I launched our campaign, one of the most important things that's taken place in the United States is that the life expectancy of Americans is nosediving. The other industrialized nations are going up and up, starting in 1980. Around 1980, our life expectancy started going the other way, completely antithetical to what the United States claims, or the elites in the United States claim that they stand for. So here's a $30 trillion economy, the number one highest GDP in the world, and the life expectancy in the United States is going down. So if you have a child or you have children, they're expected to live less than you. It's quite extraordinary. What I will be talking about as I discuss Kissinger in any of my videos is you'll understand that it's the policies of the left and the right, the bipartisan policies of the left and the right, that have resulted in devastation to not only the American working people, but the working people of the world. And so it's time we reckon with that, and choosing the lesser of two evils is not going to change anything. So anyway, before I start, I want to let all of you know that I'm running for president. And I want to share with you the video that we have that announces my campaign. And I'll give you sort of an overview of my origin, where I came from. But again, to those of you joining, this is a discussion that we're having on Henry Kissinger, the Fauci of foreign policy. Again, before I start, let me play you our video for my run for president. Thank you.
Who would have ever thought I'd be running for president of the United States of America? I was born a low caste untouchable in India's caste system. A system of aristocracy, oppression, and racism. My name is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. I'm an MIT PhD, a Fulbright scholar, a scientist, engineer, entrepreneur, and inventor. My family and I left India to come to America on my 7th birthday. I grew up in the working-class neighborhoods of New Jersey, playing baseball, mowing lawns, painting houses, and coding software. My friends and neighbors are blacks, Italians, Irish, people of all races. As a 14-year-old, I wrote 50,000 lines of software code to create the world's first email system, and was awarded the first U.S. copyright for email, recognizing me as its official inventor at a time when copyright was the only way to protect software inventions. I did that long before I ever came to MIT, revealing that big innovations can occur anytime, any place, by anybody. Growing up, I saw politicians dividing us by race and religion in both America and India, to have us fighting each other while they remained safe in their gated communities and in their playgrounds of Hollywood, Martha's Vineyard, and Silicon Valley. I'm a fighter. I fought racism and exposed their imperialist wars, fought for workers, and put my life on the line against global corruption. I never wanted to run for political office. All that changed when I saw working Americans as never before being duped by the establishment, and the not-so-obvious establishment. Across left and right, we were being sold out and made to forget why we came to America and why America existed. Lawyers, academics, billionaires, celebrities, and politicians. Elites, Clintons, Kennedys, Bidens, Obamas, Bushes, black and white have hijacked America. They printed trillions for their friends. They delivered crumbling infrastructure, corruption, and racism. They've transferred trillions to themselves, dividing black and white, fear-mongering, and fake science. Lockdowns and censorship, dirty air, food, and water, pushing drugs upon us, making us sicker. We've been sold out. One set of rules for them and another for us. We deserve a warrior with a history of courage in putting everything on the line for you, who believes in you, not them, who has created a movement bottoms up for truth, freedom, health. I've exposed their lies at the right time, never waiting until it was popular. I've exposed their false gods who exist to lead you back to them. I've exposed their fake science of lockdowns and masking and provided you solutions to fight them and win and protect your immune system, saving millions. I exposed Fauci, galvanized the Fire Fauci campaign when others remained silent. When they stole our election, we sued the government and Twitter in our historic 2020 federal lawsuit, exposing in bare view the government and big tech censorship infrastructure, the unholy alliance between government and social media companies. Where was Elon and his grifters? They stood by the sidelines and did nothing. They did not use their megaphones to help us when it could have made a big difference. Now our movement grows for truth, freedom, health, independent of all of them. Every day millions are learning the science of systems, the knowledge the elites do not want you to have, so you may learn how to think, stand up, and fight, independent of the establishment of left and right and their fake heroes. Now it's time for you to join the movement, to win back America, to win back truth, win back freedom, win back your health. That's why I'm running for President of the United States. This race is about you. This race is about truth, freedom, health versus power, profit, control. We've had enough. They think we'll fall in line and vote again for their lawyers, celebrities, billionaires, and chosen ones from above. We choose our heroes from below, from the rank and file, who do what is right at the right time, not when it's convenient and popular. They can never represent us. What America needs is a movement by the working people, for the working people, who are educated, organized, decentralized, and fight for independence from their systems of control. And that movement exists. It's ready for you. We don't need them. We need us to go bottoms up, neighbor to neighbor. My journey, your journey are all the same. It's our time. It's time we had one of us. It's time to win back truth, freedom, health, to win back America. Be part of this historic movement, all the way to our victory on November 5th, 2024. If you're an American citizen, pledge your vote now for Dr. Shiva, the independent candidate for U.S. President. No matter where you live, you can be a part of this. Volunteer as little as 20 minutes a day. Don't delay. This is Dr. Shiva, and I approve this message, paid for by Dr. Shiva for President.
All right, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. This is Dr. Shiva. We're going to have a very detailed historical discussion, education on the war criminal known as Henry Kissinger. He is really the war criminal of both left and right, as you're going to learn. This guy should be in prison, and however, he has survived until 100 years old because of bipartisan support. That's how Henry Kissinger has survived, because he's backed by the left and the right, and you're going to understand that before I end. Same way that Fauci was backed by the left and the right. To those of you who are just joining us, today's talk is entitled Henry Kissinger, the Fauci of Foreign Policy. The Fauci of Foreign Policy. Now, why do I call him the Fauci of Foreign Policy? Many of you may know, in 2020, as a systems biologist who's got a bunch of degrees from MIT, my PhD's in the field of systems biology with a focus on the immune system, I was the first one to call out Fauci. None of the other presidential candidates running right now did anything. In fact, people like Robert Booby F. Kennedy was promoting lockdowns in 2020. You can go look at it. Then he stole a lot of my material, and because he's essentially an agent of the deep state, started writing books, acting. He's essentially an actor. The Kennedys are all actors. They are the controlled opposition. Wrote a book called The Real Anthony Fauci. Now he's got a book coming out called The Real Robert Kennedy, and he uses the word truth warrior. You know, our movement, we call people warriors. Anyway, this guy's a scumbag. Kennedy supported Fauci's policies. And if you look at Fauci himself, Fauci's been around since Ronald Reagan, through left and right. If you look at the health situation of the citizens of the United States, the life expectancy since 1980 has been tanking, and that's around when Fauci came into power in the United States, appointed by Reagan. And he's been there ever since, through Reagan, through Bush, through Clinton, through Obama, through Trump, right? And all the way through Biden. So the important thing to understand is that the elite politicians and the elites get advised by these so-called quote unquote intellectuals. And if you notice that presidents come and go, and a guy like Fauci has always been there. And in 2020, I called out Fauci because as a scientist, as a systems biologist, as a biological engineer, I could see that this guy was a complete fraud. It was Fauci who in the late 80s and 90s, along with Robert Gallo, promoted the entire HIV/AIDS conflation, which is a whole nother story that we can talk about, the fraud that took place there. But it's fundamentally Fauci is, to public health what Kissinger is to foreign policy. Now, Kissinger's background, you have to recognize, goes, in fact, before Fauci. I put a poll up today. In fact, yesterday, I put a poll up asking people who was a guy who opened the door and allowed this demon, Kissinger, into the White House. And I put up 4 choices. I gave people the choice of Eisenhower, I said Johnson, Kennedy, or Nixon. And it was fascinating. Most people thought it was Nixon. All right. And no one knew it was John F. Kennedy who brought the demon into the White House. John F. Kennedy and Kissinger both come from Harvard. In fact, the Kennedy School of Government, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, which is now really the CIA think tank of the East, is named after John F. Kennedy. And that's a place where Kissinger has very, very close alliances. All right. So all these people are one. So we really need to recognize that right now, Saturday, day before yesterday, was Kissinger's 100th birthday. And you could see both wings of the establishment, talking about how great this guy is. But we need to remind people who he really is. And to give you my personal history with this, 2 very important things I'll talk about is that, when I first came to the United States, I came here as a 7-year-old kid in 1970, left India on December 2nd on my 7th birthday, literally landed in the United States on December 5th, 3 days later. And growing up in New Jersey, where I grew up, most of TV at that time was the Vietnam War. Anyone over the age of 50, nearing 60, or, in that age will remember this. You just saw pictures of body bags, pictures of helicopters, pictures of fights, and you saw 2 characters consistently on TV. You would see Nixon and you would see this other guy, Henry Kissinger, and he was paraded all over media as some great intellectual. Now, to those of us who first saw Kissinger on TV, and many of us associated Kissinger with Nixon. In fact, it was called Nixinger. There was a idiom they would call, that's how tied it they were at the hip. And the Republicans at that time would blame the Vietnam War on Johnson. Okay. And so most of us, if you didn't have a chance to really delve into the history, you thought Johnson was the one who started the Vietnam War. All right. So there was a continued effort by the quote unquote conservative right wing to always blame the Democrats for starting war, meaning not specifically Johnson. And JFK was left out of this equation because, as Seymour Hersh showed, that the Kennedys' entire existence is based on propaganda. When you have Ted Kennedy, who murdered a woman here in Chappaquiddick and got to be senator, John F. Kennedy was one of the most reckless people on the planet, as Seymour Hersh has pointed out in his book. But they created, through massive PR, this concept of Camelot, as though he was a dove, as though, speeches. By the way, he never wrote any of his speeches, books which he never wrote. But the Kennedys are essentially one big PR propaganda machine. So as you studied history a little bit closer, you really started to understand the origin of the Vietnam War. And I think it's important to review that because that's where Henry Kissinger did most of his war crimes, starting there. But one of the things we need to understand is, let me just share with you a little bit of history. We need to understand the background on how the Vietnam War and all of this horrible stuff started. Okay, so one of the things we need to understand is that the Vietnam War really began. The origins of it go to a little bit after World War II. If you may remember, after World War II, the French tried to really reestablish, their colonial control over Vietnam. Now, the most strategic of the three states comprising what was known as a former Indochina, which included Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, was Vietnam. So you had Indochina, which included Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. You can Google it and see where all this is. But Vietnam was considered the most strategic for the French. However, following the defeat of the French, right, Vietnam was partitioned by the Geneva Accords in 1954 into two parts. So Vietnam, you had communist North Vietnam and South Vietnam. All right, so you had North and South Vietnam, and that was from the Geneva Accords of 1954. And South Vietnam was non-communist, but it was also divided on religious and political lines. Now, the United States supported the military government in South Vietnam at the time, and the decision of the South Vietnamese leader, Diem, who prevented free elections, okay? So the United States, which claims it's for democracy, did not allow the South Vietnamese leader, or supported the South Vietnamese leader, Diem, to prevent free elections. So think about what I'm saying. The so-called American imperialists, which talk about spreading democracy all over the world, supported the South Vietnamese leader Diem to prevent free elections because he was afraid that it might result in unification of the country with North Vietnam. And in an effort to take over South Vietnam, the North, the communists in the North, led by Ho Chi Minh, were supporting guerrilla attacks on the South. So the Geneva Accords quickly started to crumble. So this is where America comes in, and America was developing this theory called the domino theory, okay, of foreign policy, and that was based on containing quote unquote communism. And the theory was that if one country fell to communism, the surrounding countries would also fall like dominoes. So Eisenhower, Ike, was concerned that if Vietnam fell under communist control, then other Southeast Asian and Pacific nations, including the Philippines, would fall one by one. And so in response to that threat, what ended up happening was the Southeast Treaty Organization, like NATO, was called Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, SEATO, SEATO, was formed in 1955 by the U.S. So just like what occurred after World War II in Europe, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the U.S. gets involved and creates a Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. And that was formed to prevent communist expansion, okay? Now, when that was done, what Eisenhower did was he sent a small group of advisors, 500 advisors. Kissinger was nowhere in the picture yet. He was over at Harvard doing his PhD and teaching over there, learning, or learning his demonic ways or getting philosophized in his demonic ways. And one of his Kissinger's mentors, a guy called or Oswald Spengler. Okay, and you can look him up. But anyway, and we'll come back to that. But fundamentally, Eisenhower, following this domino theory, sent about 700 military personnel and some military and economic aid to the government of South Vietnam because they're concerned. Remember what the U.S. was doing. We weren't supporting free elections in South Vietnam because many of the South Vietnamese actually wanted to be part of North Vietnam, right? So we wanted to be undemocratic in South Vietnam. So the North Vietnamese were carrying out guerrilla attacks against the South Vietnamese government, which was set up, some artificial line was drawn by the Geneva Accords and backed by the U.S. So Eisenhower sent 700 military personnel there. All right. So that's one important understanding we have to know. Now, let's now talk about what happened on February 28th, 1961. February 28th, 1961. So here you have Kennedy, and we have to be very clear. John F. Kennedy and all the Kennedys, they're basically mafia. You have Booby effing Kennedy running right now. He's part of this deep state infrastructure. I've been the only one to expose him over and over again, starting in 2020. I took a lot of heat from all these quote unquote bougie, quote unquote anti-vax moms who think they know Booby. They call him Bobby. But the reality is Bobby Kennedy, he supports full vaccination of all Americans. He supported lockdowns. He speaks from one side and does another. Okay. He says he's for full vaccination. He vaccinated all of his kids with all the 69 vaccines. And then he'll go on to rail in the same video I put out there that how the CDC is corrupt and now he's going to somehow have them create safe vaccines. The guy's full of shit. Okay. But anyway, the Kennedys are all full of shit. And you have to, and it's hard to get over this brainwashing because the amount of propaganda that they put in. But the propaganda that most people think was Nixon is the one who brought in Kissinger. No, it was in 1961, Kennedy, with open arms, brings Kissinger into the White House, to have a part-time job. And starting in 1961, that's when all the foreign policy crimes of Kissinger begin. So he appoints Kissinger as a consultant for foreign affairs. And Kissinger, legally could only spend a few days a week in the White House, but he was kept at bay of everything by what was going on in the White House, and he earned influence over many of the president's policies. So though he was shuttling between Harvard and the White House, he had gotten his claws into the White House. And Kennedy, graduate of Harvard, Kissinger, graduate of Harvard, both Harvard alumni, started collaborating together. And what did they do? So 3 months after Kissinger is brought in, John F. Kennedy authorizes sending 500 special forces. And let me just give you a very, very important idea, a very important insight into Kissinger. Kissinger was a student of this guy, Oswald Spengler, who supported Hitler and then did not support him. It's a very interesting story. But Kissinger was also a student of philosophy, but he was a what I would say a very disturbed student of philosophy, existential philosophy. But he came to build his own philosophical model called relativistic realism, which basically said the end justifies the means, that you make up truth as you want. This is at the core of Kissinger. His value system is truth really doesn't matter. The end justifies the means. And you can go do your own reading about him, but this comes from much of the German, what you can call existential philosophy, which Kissinger took and warped it a little bit to basically justify and rationalize internally. And this is why I call him a devil, a demon, because rationalization is what the devil does. And that rationalization was that the end justifies the mean, and truth doesn't matter. You, in fact, create whatever quote unquote truth you want. So think about what I'm saying. And that was very, very favorable, as you're going to realize, to the elites left and right. But this is all brought to you by this demon called Henry Kissinger, who John F. Kennedy openly allowed into the White House, because John F. Kennedy himself is an imperialist. Okay. So that's what we need to understand. Yes, Fauci, someone said, is a murderous fraud. And you're going to realize that Kissinger is a murderous fraud to the power of infinity. Okay. In many, many ways. All right. So you have to understand Kissinger's background, but it was Kennedy who brought him into the White House. All right. So after bringing him to the White House in May, Kennedy authorizes sending 500 more special forces and military advisors to assist the pro-Western government in South Vietnam. Now, by the end of 62, it escalated to there were nearly 11,000 military advisors in South Vietnam. 11,000 military advisors in South. So went from, so you can see, first they sent in 500. And then because of Kissinger's influence, and Kennedy wholeheartedly accepted, 11,000 military advisors are in South Vietnam. And that year alone, 1962, 53 military personnel are killed. So U.S. personnel are starting to engage. So as Seymour Hersh has made it clear, when people blame Johnson or Nixon for the war, no, it was Kennedy who really escalated and started the war in Vietnam. If 53 military personnel have been killed, that's a war, okay, U.S. personnel. And then Kennedy also sent more military advisors to support the South Vietnamese army. And so by the end of 1963, the numbers had risen up to 16,000. Okay, so let's get that clear. It was Kennedy who brought in Kissinger in February of 1961. Kissinger and Kennedy come together and they literally start the war in South Vietnam. And it's you have to just look at the facts. They went from 700 advisors with Eisenhower to then 16,000, and you have U.S. personnel, at least 50, 60 of them getting killed. All right. So that is the facts about the Kennedy-Kissinger relationship, how Kissinger comes in. Let's now look at why I call, and many people who actually look at the facts and have talked about this consider Kissinger a complete war criminal. Let's look at the reality. Well, what did he do in Vietnam, right? Once Nixon comes in, Kissinger has a full-time job there. And in his first 2 years in office, he helped Nixon sabotage the Vietnamese peace talks. And he did this for his own political gain. And then he expanded the war into Laos and Cambodia, which are the other two parts of Indochina. And you can read about all the bombings, the secret bombings hid that were taking place in Cambodia. And this, by sabotaging the Vietnamese peace talks, which really helped the military-industrial academic complex sell more weapons because they could have ended this war much sooner, this ended up having a very, very destabilizing effect, and which gave rise to the Khmer Rouge, okay? And now everyone knows the Khmer Rouge it killed up to 2 million people, okay? 2 million people died at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. All that could have been stopped if he did not sabotage the Vietnamese peace talks. And he also advocated the bombing of, in Laos and Cambodia, and in his own words, anything that moves. And you can see all those crazy pictures from Vietnam or Cambodia at that time, and it was Kissinger who authorized those bombings. So he basically devastated Vietnam. He devastated the people of Vietnam, but more importantly, poor working class Americans were sent to Vietnam, 17, 18-year-old kids, not the wealthy elites from the Republicans and Democrats, but poor working class kids were set to fight this war that did not need to be fought, to fight, quote unquote, communism, 15,000 miles away. And all of this was brought to you by Kissinger, okay? The demon Kissinger. Did he stop with Vietnam? No. This guy continued his war crimes. If you go to Pakistan in 1971, it was Kissinger who backed Pakistan in its war against Bangladesh. Despite evidence of massive massacre and rape, he continued that. Remember, Pakistan separated from India, and then you had East and West Pakistan. And so you had this division between Pakistan and Bangladesh. But again, Kissinger was right in the center of that, backing the war in Pakistan, supporting massive massacre and rape of the people of Bangladesh. Now let's go to the other, back to the other hemisphere in South America, Chile. Some of you may want to study this on your own, but 1973, it was Kissinger who orchestrated the military coup against a democratically elected Allende. So Allende was popularly elected by the people of Chile. He was loved by the people, and he was doing policies which wanted to support his people. Anaconda Mines is a copper mines in Chile, and they were completely abusing the workers. U.S. imperialist interests didn't like this. So it was Kissinger who executed a coup in 1973, and he installed this crazy dictator, General Pinochet. And if you want to read about what happened to these young people who protested Pinochet, they were shot and then literally buried into a stadium, cemented into a stadium. This is what Henry Kissinger supported. So you have to understand, my growing up in the 70s and getting politically, doing a lot of my own political research, this guy, Kissinger, was, to me, in my view, is a complete war criminal. And so I find it amazing in the recent couple of articles I've read, oh, the statesman, he's 100 years old. It's unbelievable, this guy. Actually, it's believable that he got the Nobel Peace Prize. We know what the Nobel Peace Prize is. It's one section of the elites patting the back of another section of the elites. But I just wanted to share with you. So not only Vietnam, Pakistan, then Chile, he literally orchestrated a military coup against a democratically elected Allende. Okay. Then you go over to Indonesia, back to the Southeast Asia. In 1965, while he was Secretary of State, he lent his support to a guy called Suharto, President Suharto of Indonesia, who himself was a rabid despot. And he was already responsible for mass killings of not just thousands, hundreds of thousands in the deadly conquest of East Timor, Easttimor. Go study that. And so it was Kissinger who enabled that dictatorship in 1975. So when you look at this, within a few short years, first he was in the Kennedy administration starting the Vietnam War. Then under the Nixon administration, within a few short years, he masterminded the illegal bombings of Laos and Cambodia and enabled genocide in both East Timor and East Pakistan. Okay. And we're not talking about some minor things. I mean, this was serious genocide that Kissinger did. All right. Then you can go to the Middle East. Okay. In Cyprus, it was Kissinger himself who proposed an intervention in Cyprus. And he summed up his philosophy saying, the illegal we do immediately, the unconstitutional takes a little longer. Okay. So if it's, you can do stuff illegally fast. If it's unconstitutional, it takes a little longer. And obviously we know it was Kissinger who advised, backing the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, which gave eventually rise to what we have now, the Taliban. And growing up in the 80s at MIT, I led many demonstrations against the U.S. secret war in Central America, but it was Kissinger who created the entire Contras and that whole strategy. One of the things I want to just let you know, I don't have the flyers, but it was 1980. I led one of the biggest demonstrations in Boston at Tufts University, where we created a flyer exposing, as I'm doing now, this war criminal, Henry Kissinger. And our little flyer, we distributed it all over Boston. And Kissinger was planning on coming to speak at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, another CIA think tank, like the Kennedy School or like Stanford. And we put out so many of these flyers all over Boston. The scumbag Kissinger got scared and he ran. In fact, the Boston Globe reported him saying, our newspaper was called The Student. He goes, because of the abuse I received in The Student, he decided not to come. So think about the effect our little flyer had, bottoms up. We chased away Henry Kissinger from Boston. It was a big, big victory. But I just want to let you know, I've been an activist on the ground most of my life since about 15, 16 years old. So that's why I really encourage all of you to get involved in the movement that we are building for truth, freedom, and health. Our movement for truth, freedom, and health is a bottoms-up movement, and we teach people how to think, how to fight not only the obvious establishment, but the not so obvious establishment. I have a lot more stuff I want to speak on Kissinger, but before I do that, I just want to share with you my video that we put together that really explains why we need to build a bottoms-up movement and what the movement for truth, freedom, and health is. But we still have another 20 minutes to go on exposing the scumbag Kissinger. But I do want you to listen to this video on the movement for truth, freedom, and health. I encourage all of you to get involved, because the only way out of this is not voting for left or right, but building a bottoms-up movement. My run for president is a complete paradigm shift. It's about you becoming a leader in your community and getting the tools, and the movement for truth, freedom, and health gives you those tools. So let me share that with you. We have allowed our country to be taken over from within, and the end goal is you will have a homogenized world where we will become slaves, because there is a condition among the elites that really thinks they're better than you, deep down inside them, that you don't deserve the freedoms you have. They don't. This reality is what people need to wake up to, and we need to all unite, working people. There's only one movement that can do that, and that is the movement that we started creating here in Massachusetts, the movement for truth, freedom, and health. Look, I've been a student of politics since I was a 4-year-old kid.
studying revolutionary movements, left wing, right wing. There's a physics, there's a nuclear science to destroying the establishment. To build a bridge, you need to understand Newton's equation. You need to understand the laws of gravity. You need to understand Poisson's ratio. There is a way to build a revolution. And that's why I put this together. My goal is to train an army of truth, freedom, and health leaders. We don't need followers like social media. We need leaders, but they need training because the educational system does not teach them history, nothing. So in 3 hours, that's what I've started doing. That's the solution. We got to train people. First, with understanding what a system is, the dynamics of all systems that affect nature. The second is understanding the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Freedom is the ability to move freely, communicate freely, talk freely. Without freedom, you cannot convert ideas, hypothesis into truth, which is science. And without freedom, you can't really get to truth. And without truth, you make up fake problems and fake solutions, which means you destroy our health. And without health, which is the infrastructure of us and our body, you can't fight for freedom. Truth, freedom, health. Third concept is it has to be bottoms up. Working people, people who work uniting. And what the right wing has done is whenever you say working people unite, that must be communist. Meanwhile, they've let the Democrats run unions, which suppress workers. Completely corrupt. But when you look at the arc of American history, it's been when working people came up. We need to go local. Every solution I'm coming up with as a part of this movement, we're giving the science, which is the truth, and then we tell people what they can do on the ground. Like with election fraud, you don't need to wait for some lawyer. Our goal is to train people to go local, to go local, to go local, fight locally. Forget lawyers, forget politicians, forget celebrities. You've got to learn politics, and there is a science to it. They lock us down, we should be ready to shut them down. And the fourth part of this principle is the not so obvious establishment. So when you look at a system, there's always something that disturbs you from getting to your goal. Well, the biggest disturbance is the not so obvious establishment, which are those people who claim they're for you, on the left and the right. The Al Sharptons who tell black people I'm for you. The Tucker Carlsons. Do you think any true anti-establishment person will ever be on Fox or CNN? I don't think so. They both mislead working people back into the establishment. Without this solid understanding of political physics and theory, you're screwed. You're going to follow on the left wing, Bernie Sanders. Oh, he said something. Or Robert Kennedy. Scumbags. Or you're going to follow some right-wing talk show host. They're not going to lead us to liberation. It's us. We're building a bottoms-up movement, and that political physics, it's a nuclear science of change. Bottoms up. We have to organize to understand that there is people who talk a good game and then look at what they actually do, left and right. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity may say some good things, but I don't see the urgency in his voice to get something done, and it can only come when you weaponize yourself with the right knowledge. You need to be able to identify a rat. You know, Christ didn't go after the Romans, right? It was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who screwed him up. His own quote-unquote people. And that's where we're at. So these four concepts I've built into a curriculum where people can go to truthfreedomhealth.com, and it's an educational program. We need to train people in political theory. You need to have physics, and I've created that curriculum. People need to get educated. We need to get educated fast. And within a half an hour, I can teach people. 2 years of MIT control systems, I teach people those concepts. Then I apply it, anyone can understand it. And then you say, oh, I got to build a bottoms-up movement. They have to get politically astute, and then they have to go locally and act, not sit there on social media. They have to act locally, defy locally, do civil obedience locally, but with knowledge on how to build a movement. Now, the Senate campaign's expanded to the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health, and they can find it on truthfreedomhealth.com, so people can sign in, they can get access to a bunch of videos. If they want to take a course and become a Truth, Freedom, Health leader, I offer a full scholarship there, but we want people to make a commitment that they'll study, that they'll get certified, that they'll go do activities on the ground. So go to truthfreedomhealth.com.
As many of you know, in the videos I do, I like to take a systems approach in exposing the problem. A systems approach means drawing interconnections and parallels. So we began this discussion very briefly. I've done probably 50 videos exposing Fauci. You can go back to 2020. But Fauci has been this policymaker for nearly 40 years, 50 years, right? Kissinger's been there for nearly 60 plus years. So it's fascinating to see how these quote unquote academic elites remain whether presidents come and go, because ultimately the academic elites are like the Brahmins of the old caste system of India. They remain there and they advise the politicians and the kings, right? But they are ultimately a representative of the bipartisan elites. And we're going to talk more about that. One of the things I just wanted to post here is right there. You can see every Thursday at 11 a.m. EST and 8 p.m. EST, I do an open house. And it's invite all of you guys to get trained on how you can become truth, freedom, and health warriors. The only way real change, as a video said, occurs is when we organize bottoms up. Our run for president of the United States is completely different. We're not looking for any, any of the mainstream media to support us. We know they won't. We are building this truly bottoms up movement, but there's a science, there's a physics. So go to truthfreedomhealth.com, become a warrior scholar, or directly support the campaign. And anytime you contribute to the campaign, I like to be, it's hard for me to take something for nothing, but when you support our campaign, we'll give you a lot of tools, like my books and all those kind of things that can help you become a champion for truth, freedom, and health, and become a truth, freedom, health warrior scholar. So anyway, let's get back to the scumbag, the war criminal, Henry Kissinger. So we've discussed very briefly, and to those of you joining, the talk today is on Henry Kissinger, the Fauci of foreign policy. Many of you know I've shared a lot about Fauci, what a criminal he is, but Henry Kissinger is Fauci to the power of infinity in some level, okay? But let's go back and let's really discuss the fact that here Kissinger was brought in by the other imperialist, Kennedy, who really started the Vietnam War. It wasn't started by Johnson. It wasn't started by Eisenhower. It was started by Kennedy. The others simply escalated, but Kennedy's the one who brought in Kissinger in February 1961, who advised him to escalate this war. Kissinger has no morals. His entire philosophic base is built on a hellish model of the ends justify the means. And by the way, someone didn't listen to me carefully. When I talked about one of his mentors was Spengler, doesn't mean he met with him. A lot of his writings and talks is what Kissinger imbued. So please get that clear, okay? Spengler was probably a generation before Kissinger, but he absorbed much of his philosophical teachings. All right. So let's go back and look at, so we've talked about the fact that Kissinger, got his chops wet, starting this brutal war in Vietnam, that resulted in many Americans dying, working class people, and a lot of people in Indochina suffering. Then he went and backed, screwed up Pakistan. Then he screwed up Chile. Then he screwed up Indonesia, Afghanistan. And then obviously this war he conducted against an illegal war with Reagan. And then obviously the Iraq war also. Now, Kissinger's philosophy was really the ends justified the means. He has a massive contempt for human life. And everything he pursues was really for the interests of American imperialists, not for working people, but for the people that he serves. And who are these people? Well, we have to understand that these people came from the left and the right, okay? And the left and the right, you're going to see very carefully, Democrats and Republicans are both behind him. Kissinger was really the one who started this term bipartisanship. Bipartisanship is a buzzword, means that both wings of the establishment are going to screw you really good. And that's what he developed. That means the left and the right are coming together as one. And that's what we've said, that part of that philosophy that they brainwash people in every election cycle is you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. All right. And this was all brought to you by Henry Kissinger. Now, the elites promoted him like a pop icon. Okay. And they, in fact, newspapers in the 70s used to call him the sex symbol of the Nixon administration. Hugh Hefner had him over at the Playboy Mansion, right? All the people along the Beltway, he was considered the playboy of the West Wing. And Kissinger loved to be photographed by the so-called liberal media, who he claimed he didn't like. And he was always in the gossip pages, right? And he always had these, affairs with famous women, and he would make sure that spilled over. A very famous one he had was with this actress Jill St. John, and apparently the alarm went off at her Hollywood mansion one night, and as they were swimming in their pool, and he said he was teaching her chess. But all of this gossip he loved. He loved being a pop icon, and he hated the anti-war movement. He called the anti-war demonstrators, upper middle class college kids, and he attacked the quote unquote liberal elites. But the hypocrisy is Kissinger also hung out with the liberal elites and their high society, and he loved to go to all their dinners and their parties in Hollywood and New York. And Gloria Steinem, the liberal elite woman who quote unquote fights for feminism when it's really not real feminism she fights for. She fights for bourgeois feminism. It's a whole nother discussion. And Gloria Steinem was enamored by Kissinger, right? And she said he's the only interesting man in the Nixon administration. You had gossip columnists, describing him as humorous and worldly and sophisticated and a cavalier with women, right? Hugh Hefner considered him a friend and said that he was the most widely desired dates. He was most widely desired for dates at the Playboy Mansion. So all these liberal elites, left and right, loved him. When Kissinger turned 90, for example, in 2013, he had a red carpet birthday party. Now, who attended that party? Michael Bloomberg, Roger Ailes, right-wing guy, Michael Bloomberg, left-wing guy, Barbara Walters, left-wing, and even John Kerry. John Kerry was supposedly an anti-war protester. He was also there, bowing down to Kissinger. Clinton and McCain showed up at his birthday party, and they made toasts. McCain, who, and there's all this controversy about McCain, who spent more than 5 years as a POW, described Kissinger as a great man, and he said how the Vietnam War, was enormously impactful on both their lives. And at that birthday party 10 years ago, you know what Kissinger talked about? And he praised bipartisanship. Bipartisanship. Write that down. That means, hey, the left and right elites, McCain and Clinton and Barbara Walters, all these people, left and right, are all my friends, and we all work together. So at his birthday party 10 years ago, all the elites showed up. And that is openly, they're telling you to your face, we all work together. We all work together to expand U.S. imperialism for our friends. We don't give a damn about poor people all over the world. We will use poor people in America as cannon fodder to go fight poor people elsewhere to expand markets for the elites. That is what Kissinger did. And what's fascinating is the left wing loves Fauci, a scumbag, and the right wing promotes Kissinger. It's really fucked up. Okay, excuse my language. But the left and the right, when it comes to Kissinger, are blatantly one. And that birthday party really says it, says it all. In fact, at that birthday party, in fact, bipartisanship was how Kissinger, he really embodied that. Bipartisanship, meaning not bipartisanship for working people, bipartisanship for the elites. In fact, at that party, Condoleezza Rice, Donald Rumsfeld, two other warmongers were there, along with, guess who also showed up at that birthday party? Hillary Clinton, McCain, Bill Clinton, and they all came there to praise this scumbag. And they all said, oh, how the world really loves Henry Kissinger. McCain in the speech said, I know of no individual is more respected in the world than Henry Kissinger. This is absolutely false. Most of the world hates Henry Kissinger. And this is why when people go around the world, and if you have an American passport, this is why most of other people hate America, because of Henry Kissinger. Not because of other reasons, but because of the policies that Kissinger put forward across left and right. It was Henry Kissinger who created this disdain from America. In fact, in 2002, there are several countries that he avoids visiting because of fear that he may be apprehended. In 2002, for example, a Chilean court demanded he answer questions about his role in the 1973 coup d'etat. So he avoids going to Chile. In 2001, a French judge sent police officers to Kissinger's Paris hotel to ask him, formally request him about the coup, during where several French citizens disappeared. And the other thing we need to understand is around the same time, Kissinger also canceled a trip to Brazil because there were rumors that were circulating that he was stopped. Okay, that he would be stopped if he went to Brazil for his role in Operation Condor. What was Operation Condor? It was a 1970 scheme that brought together all the South American dictators, right? In helping them get rid of each other's exiled opponents. So that was Operation Condor. So one South American dictator who had some opponent he didn't like in his country would then have that person disappeared using another dictator. This is the kind of shit that Kissinger got the United States people involved in. And then an Argentinian judge at that time had already made Kissinger a potential defendant in a future criminal indictment. But all of this, the media, the elites who own both wings of the media have worked very, very hard, particularly over the last 10 to 20 years, to try to resurface this warmongering war criminal as though he's some great statesman. But the reality is Henry Kissinger is one of the most biggest war criminals of the 20th century. And who likes him? Not the rest of the world. Working people, surely not, who lost their sons and daughters in all these wars, but it's really the rich and the powerful across left and right. And that's his bipartisan appeal. And he was really the strategist for US imperialism. And the reason the wealthy and the bougie people and the elites love him is because he expanded the empire for them. That's pretty much it. And where did again, Kissinger start? With Kennedy. Where did Kissinger start? With Kennedy. And where did he really build all of his ideas? At Harvard University. And it's no coincidence that Harvard University created in the 1980s the Kennedy School of Government, which is really a CIA think tank of the East. And out of that school, they also created the Balfour School. And it was a Balfour School, as I've shared with all of you, that is where the United States government got together with people from Britain and they created the backdoor portal, censorship portal in the United States. So all of Kissinger's strategy for the last 60 years was pointed at subjugating people all over the world. That same strategy now is coming back to the United States to subjugate the working people of the United States. That's what's going on. And the center point of that is right there, the Kennedy School, okay? So the Kennedys are the ones who are like this with Kissinger. They're the ones who gave him his first limelight. And it's no coincidence that the Kennedy School at Harvard is a center of continued US imperialism, which used to be to subjugate people in other countries. But that same infrastructure, the operating system of that is Henry Kissinger, which is about the end justifies the means. We don't care about other people. We have a contempt for human life. That same infrastructure that we use, that they used to subjugate people across the world is now being brought back to subjugate people here. That's why the lawsuit that I did in 2020 was so historic, because it was our lawsuit that exposed this infrastructure. Now you have the grifters running around trying to hide that, say, oh yeah, we knew about this, but they don't really want to address this fundamental issue that Henry Kissinger is a complete scumbag. And he was brought to you initially by the Kennedys, okay? And he is institutionalized at Harvard and at the Kennedy School of Government, okay? So some people say, why did they kill JFK and RFK? Well, look, you really have to go into this and you have to do your own research. But look, the elites themselves have their own feuds, okay? It's like Mafia Guy 1 is fighting against Mafia Guy 2. Why are you so concerned about that? They want you to get involved in Mafia Guy 1 and 2. Why? You should be concerned about what happens to working people. So please, don't get involved in their feuds because they have nothing for you. Elon Musk someone said Soros. Elon Musk is the face of George Soros. It's easy to attack Soros. It's easy to attack the Clintons. It's easy to attack these open people, but the hard people it's hard to attack is a not so obvious establishment. So I hope today's talk has made it clear that Henry Kissinger is the face, the strategist, the demon behind this concept of bipartisanship that brought together the left and the right to screw over working people all over the world and screw over working people right here in the United States. And the front men for these people was Kennedy, Nixon, Johnson, and you go down the list, Reagan, etc. These are just the front actors, but the real mastermind is people like Kissinger, people like Fauci, who report up to their overlords. So the main takeaway from this is, if you recognize that Fauci was around for 40, 50 years in the White House, Kissinger was around for 60 years. It is these people's thoughts, their masterminding demonic plans that really have influenced policy. And the chickens are coming home to roost in the United States is because those policies have affected the American people now. If you look at all these soldiers that were sent off to war to fight for the elites, many of them who come back are coming back with PTSD. And one person with PTSD affects 100 people, causes stress around them. One person affects 100. It's quite enormous. So if you look at the health issues, the fact, as I started this talk, our entire campaign, Shiva for President, is based on the fact that the life expectancy of every other industrialized nation is going like this. America's going like this. Why? Because the chickens have come home to roost. It is the policies of the left and right, the bipartisan policies of the left and right, that are destroying the health of the American people. That's what's going on. So stop feeling, concern and sympathy for the Kennedys or the Trumps or the Bushes or whoever the hell they are, whatever the flavors. Start having sympathy for working people who were sent to fight these imperialist wars that gave them zero in return. And that's what I want all of you to think about, okay? You really have to start thinking about that. But most importantly, recognize that the movement for truth, freedom, and health, our campaign, Dr. Shiva for President, offers a solution, which is to engage you to build a bottoms-up movement. And that bottoms-up movement, where you become a leader, where you understand these dynamics of what it takes to build a movement and to get the tools, that's how we win. So support the campaign, Shiva for President. You can also go learn from the system I've created at Truth, Freedom, and Health. And I'm going to play you a features video so you understand that we've created tools, practical tools, so you can become a Truth, Freedom, and Health warrior scholar. And if you don't want to do that, volunteer for the campaign, get involved. So here you go.
Hello, this is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. Welcome to VA Shiva, the platform of education, technology, and activism, so you may raise your consciousness to win the truth, freedom, and health you need to create the future you deserve. The VA Shiva platform provides its truth, freedom, health warrior scholars the following 3 capabilities. Number 1, an ultimate education that is based on the science of systems. Number 2, technologies to empower you to take charge of your health, as well as social media tools, independent of big tech, so you can connect with other incredible truth, freedom, health warrior scholars equally dedicated like you to winning truth, freedom, and health. 3, instruments for activism, so you become a beacon of light in your online and offline community to educate others' growth and advancement. VA Shiva provides you the foundations of the science of systems, the ultimate education. The science of systems provides you the missing fundamental scientific knowledge to understand every system in and around you. The science of systems will enable you to uncover the real problem and real solution in any situation and on any issue. Concerning the educational component, first you will receive direct access to me to learn the science of systems in my 3-hour live private online group class that I run every week. Second, you will have access to archived lectures so you can continue your education independent of me. Third, you can test your proficiency in learning the fundamental principles and get a formal certification for the foundations of systems. Independent of this classroom education, you will receive also 4 important books. The first book is the best-selling classic Systems and Revolution, from which you can learn all of these concepts and more. The second book is The Science of Everything, that will educate you on how the science of systems is the foundational knowledge of every system in the universe. The third book, Your Body, Your System, focuses on how to understand the interplay of these systems within your own body. And then the fourth book, Your System, Your Life, will help you apply these principles to other aspects of your life, such as running a business, understanding relationships, and more. Beyond the curriculum and books, the second capability is the technologies that you will be afforded. One of them is a powerful Your Body, Your System software, which is an online laboratory where you can use your body as a system to further deepen your understanding of the science of systems. systems. The tool allows you to understand what kind of system you are. Is your system on course or is it off course? And how the inputs of food, supplements, herbs, activities such as sleep, yoga, meditation, exercise can affect your body to bring it back on course. Finally, to support your education, I've also included a seminal scientific paper that I wrote, which will help you understand that the knowledge of systems, it does not only originate in the modern world starting in the 1920s and 30s, but it actually dates back 10 to 20,000 years and intersects directly with the foundations of Eastern systems of medicine. In addition to this, you will also get 2 scientific papers sharing how the science of systems can also be used to apply to understanding how food is medicine. One paper exposes turmeric from the molecular systems level and how it affects your body. The other paper explores ginger and how that affects your body. That's just the educational piece. As you raise your consciousness through this education, you will likely want to connect with other Truth, Freedom, Health warrior scholars in an environment where you can connect and build community. To support that, I've also created 2 powerful social media tools. One of them is a vashiva forum. Here you can start discussions, you can pose questions and meet others and have healthy debates. The other is vashiva social, where you can create your own profile, your own presence, like other major social media tools. However, it is independent of big tech. You can use vashiva social to interconnect with your fellow Truth, Freedom, Health warrior scholars and build community. Beyond the education capability and the social media capability, the platform also enables you to take action by disseminating your knowledge on the ground and into your local online and offline communities. Powerful educational cards and research are included so you can pass these cards to your friends and neighbors that provide them summarized content which further directs them to online research and education. In addition to this, the activism component also provides you many short 1-minute educational video content, memes, and text, allowing you to quickly craft messages for your Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and other pages so you can deliver content to educate others and drive them to longer educational posts on vashiva. vashiva is fundamentally an enabling platform for you to get the truth, freedom, and health you deserve through education, technology, and activism. I hope you become a Truth, Freedom, and Health warrior scholar today. Thank you.
All right, everyone. In conclusion, it's about 10:52 p.m. Just remember that Henry Kissinger is a war criminal. He's not a saint. And the fact that he got the Nobel, quote unquote, Peace Prize pretty much says it all. The elites, left and right, quote unquote, bipartisanship. He was really the mastermind of all of this. He was brought in by the Kennedys. And it's important that we really set the record straight. This guy is not a good human being. He hates human beings. He's really the Fauci of American foreign policy. But as we leave tonight, just remember, for those of you who joined late, you can go look at it again. But the talk was Henry Kissinger, the Fauci of foreign policy. Please, subscribe if you're on YouTube or any of the other channels. Click on notification, click the like, comment on this. That's the way we get around the censors, because it's clear that they shadow ban us, particularly after I started exposing Musk, and particularly after our major lawsuit. So do your part if you enjoyed this video to get the word out there. But most importantly, consider supporting our campaign, Shiva for President, and consider you becoming an active warrior by becoming a Truth, Freedom, and Health warrior. And go to truthfreedomhealth.com. If you want to come to an open house I host every Thursday at 11 a.m. EST and 8 p.m. EST, simply go to vashiva.com/orientation and sign up. Anyway, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. Be well. I hope everyone's having a good weekend. And wherever you are, good night, good morning, good afternoon. Be well. Be the light. Best to you and your families. Thank you.